In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the brand new WeatherKit framework announced at WWDC 2022. Before we jump into things, start by dropping a like down below, open up Xcode 14 beta, let's create a new project, and take a look at WeatherKit. So we're going to stick with the iOS tab up here in the app template. This will work both in, of course, SwiftUI and UIKit since we're getting weather data, but we'll stick with UIKit for today's video. And we're going to go ahead and creatively call this WeatherKit example. And we'll stick with Swift as well as storyboard, continue, save it wherever you'd like. I'll toss it onto my desktop and replace an existing folder of that name. And like so, we've got a Xcode project spun up. I'm going to choose a simulator, 13 Pro here. Just give this a run to get this simulator to pop up. And let's jump on over to our view controller and bring on over WeatherKit. So we'll jump into here, and of course, we'll start by importing WeatherKit, super creatively named. Presumably, this is a culmination of Apple's recent acquisition of Dark Sky, the super popular weather app a few months/year ago. Now, WeatherKit allows you to get the weather. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to illustrate getting the weather, and I've already wrote out a view, which I'll copy and paste into the project, where we will render out some basic weather information. Now, I already wrote out the view just to save everyone's time, so I'll paste it on in right there. More or less, we're just bringing on in the temperature, the condition, as well as the temperature condition, as well as, let's see, what else? The icon for the actual weather. So let's jump back to the view controller. And essentially, we need to access WeatherKit through a service. Now, this WeatherKit service is called Weather Service. Let's try that one more time, Weather Service. And it does provide a singleton, although we can also instantiate it ourselves as well. And the benefit and the reason Apple lets you do this is perhaps you have various parts of your application that gets the weather and you want to optimize high and low priority fetching via dispatch queues. You can have multiple instances of this service. So now that we've got a service here, we need to write out three functions. Now the first one is to get user location, since we need to get the weather for a particular location. The second function is going to be get weather, and this is going to take in a user location, which will be a CL location. And it's not auto-completing because we need to import core location up here. And just like that, we need one more function, and this will be to set up our view, and that'll be that weather view that I just copy and pasted. And we'll get into things by calling these functions up here. So set up view, and we'll just say get user location. And once we have the location as a byproduct, we'll fetch the weather. So let's go ahead and just give this a run, and we shouldn't quite see anything yet, which makes sense. And let's start dealing with the actual fetching here of the weather, since that's kind of the star of the show today. So we need to call weather service. So we're going to say service, and we need to call weather for a particular location. And you'll notice that Apple didn't even include a function signature with a closure or callback. We need to use async await, and this is Apple presumably pushing this new concurrency model, which makes sense. So we'll just pass in our location here. Now we need to say try and await. Since we can both throw and it is an async operation, we need to wrap it in a task as well as a do catch block, since we can indeed throw a error which we'll want to catch and print out here in our case. So we'll say string describing the error if one is thrown. If one isn't thrown, what we can do is we'll get a result, and this result will be a weather object off which we can get a bunch of data. Now, before we actually go ahead and look into that data, let's actually set up getting the user location. So to do that, we need to bring in the location manager, which will be CL location manager. And from this guy, we can say location manager. We want to start updating the user location, and we of course want to request some permission as well, since it's slightly important. So we're going to say request when in use permission, and or authorization, I should say. And we also want to set this guy's delegate where we will actually get that location. So here we'll conform to the location manager's delegate, and down here we'll have the only function which we need, which I believe is something along the lines of did update location. So let's see, location, and we want location manager did update location. Let's see, does pause, did resume, and let's see, I believe what we want is did update locations like so. Once we have our location, we can get it by saying location.first. And we're just going to stop observing or updating for locations, I should say. So we'll say location manager, and we are going to say stop updating location to preserve that precious GPS use and battery life. And we can say get weather, passing in that location. So we've done a lot here. Let's go ahead and just do a command B to make sure everything is building, which it in fact is. Now let's not forget to add the privacy description here to our plist for that request, which is weather when in use. So let's try that again, rather location when in use. I'm getting ahead of myself. And we can add a description of please allow access to get weather. And if we go ahead and give it a run, what you should see is a alert for the permission to get the user's location. So we'll allow it here, and we should not see an error down here. What we should see is some information about weather. Now, I don't believe we are printing it out quite yet. So let's jump back into here, and let's print out some interesting pieces of information. So we've got a result here, presumably, and we are going to print out the results.current weather. And we are also going to print out results. I believe we get a daily forecast as well as a minutely forecast, which is pretty nuts if you think about it. And I'm just going to preface or prefix these with a string to identify what it is. So here we'll have current, here we'll have daily, and the last one will be minutely. Go ahead and give this guy a run, and we should see some data printed out. So here we have our current weather. And Apple has used the custom description here to specify things like, what date is this weather for, as well as the current temperature in Celsius, the condition, which is mostly cloudy. I believe this is for Cupertino. Now we also have daily, and we can see minutely is in fact nil, since we need to specify a different function to get this data back on the model. Now let's actually render this stuff out, and we can dive a little deeper into the pieces of information that are available that come back to us from this request. Now, one thing I want to mention before we set up the view is over here in App Store Connect, or rather the developer portal, I should say, I have registered a bundle ID, and I have checked the WeatherKit service checkbox here, which is in fact required to get the weather. Apple included, I believe, 500,000 free API calls in a developer membership, so pretty easy to get started. And there are payment plan subscriptions for more quota increases. So let's set up that view that we created and see it in action. So we're going to say that we have a weather view, which will be nothing more than just our weather view, and we'll just set this guy up in this function we created here. So we are going to say view, add subview. We're going to add this guy, and the only thing we need to really do in here is just add a couple constraints to get this guy to show up. So I'll say leading anchor is constrained to the leading anchor, and I'll just copy and paste this very quickly and just add the other anchors here. I'll change the corresponding one here on the left as well. Go ahead and give this guy a run, and we should see our starting view. And we have some default label values in there, so I'll jump into that view, and we'll just change these to be dashes so we don't actually see something there before we actually pass in data. And now that we have the weather back here, instead of just printing it, what we can do is we can say weather view, configure, and that's not configure, configure with results, and we pass in the current weather. So just like that, we'll see the icon, we'll see 18.71 degrees Celsius, as well as the current condition. So it's literally that easy to get weather. I was actually thinking about this earlier, and this makes a lot of the kind of overhead of building a weather app or component into your application quite trivial. No more using, the Open Weather API. Of course, you can still choose to do so if you'd like. The weather service is also available via a REST API if you want to, build a multi-platform experience, perhaps an Android app. etc., etc. Now, jumping on into the model that we have provided here from Apple, current weather is an instance of current weather, and there is a whole host of things on here, such as the cloud cover, the date, the condition, symbol name, which is what we use to actually get the SF symbol associated with the weather, which we show there. We also have things like dew points, humidity, pressure, the pressure trend, as well as if it's the current if current time is daylight. We also have UV index, visibility, wind, etc., etc. Basically everything you would expect to get from a modern weather service. So that is WeatherKit in a nutshell. It's pretty easy to use, and I have a couple thoughts in terms of what y'all could use it for, as well as what I plan to use it for myself. Somewhere in here, there is also information about moon events, which I thought was pretty cool, as well as sun events. So things like sunset and sunrise, as well as the various phases of the moon, which I thought was really interesting because there are actual full-blown applications that take this information and plot it on like a calendar, things like a new moon and a waxing gibbous, waning gibbous, etc., etc. So pretty cool. Still digging into the framework, but that's a basic intro to WeatherKit. Let me know what you guys think down below. As always, hit that like button before clicking away. Hit subscribe if you are new here and haven't subscribed yet. Thanks again for watching. Connect on all the socials. I will see you on the next one.